I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is Genesis Does, and I have a question for all of you. If you load 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. This is 16T, or if you prefer, 16 tons for Sega Genesis, but it was only spelled 16T, just like the weights that you drop on your enemies here. Now, this game only came out via the Sega MegaNet modem and the associated Sega CD releases of Sega MegaNet games, but other than that, it's a very obscure title, even by Sega MegaNet standards. You cannot find Wikipedia entries for it. You cannot find basically anything if you search for 16T because you're going to get a lot of false positives. So I had to dig a little deeper and go to sega-16.com. So to Doug Jackson, I say thank you for being the only one to give a really in-depth write-up of this game. And at first, when you boot up this ROM on your emulator or console of choice, you may think it's actually not working because of all those glitches you saw at the beginning and it said code error and everything. But that's actually the premise of this game. The character you're playing as is a computer programmer, and all these things walking around in the game are bugs. And you're trying to squash the bugs under 16 tons of weight. You've actually entered into the code and decided to take them out in person yourself. I guess just staring at the code was no longer getting the job done, so he had to take things literally and squash the bugs. So you traverse these levels using the weights both as a way to get from one platform to the next and as a way to destroy your enemies. And once you've destroyed all the enemies in a level, you proceed to the next level. Pretty simple, not a whole lot to think about there. You just move and throw. You throw the weights with the action button and you jump with the other action button. I think two of the buttons actually repeat themselves. I believe A and C. Yeah, A and C jump and B throws the weight. But do be careful because you don't have an unlimited number of weights to throw. You can actually run out of weights and then you have to wait until you destroy one of the weights or the enemy destroys one of the weights. And apparently these 16 tons of weight are very unstable because just jumping up and down on them is enough to destroy them, which really sucks because you also need them to platform from one area to the next. So you kind of have to destroy them and you kind of don't want to destroy them. It's a very careful balancing act. And the game itself seems to be doing a very careful balancing act. When you get too many 16-ton weights and too many sprites on the screen, the slowdown is pretty dramatic here. Maybe that's part of the reason this was only a Sega MegaNet game and never developed any further beyond this point, because there was something in the code, not the code of the game's premise, but the literal code of this game that caused it to not be able to handle all of the sprites on the screen, or the Sega Genesis was not equipped to handle it the way the intended programming was done. There had to have been some way to limit the amount of sprites on a line to figure that out, but whoever coded it did not do that. They did, however, put sliding platforms in there, so if you like ice skating around on levels, 16 tons will give you that and much more. Each level presents different hazards in this virtual world that change the way you interact with moving from one platform to the next. But going back to Doug Jackson's article, I think he summed up 16 tons pretty well when he said, "It's a game that's fun to play for around 15 to 20 minutes, but is far too shallow to have been released on Genesis and would have felt more at home on a system like ColecoVision or another system from the time. It's really not worth tracking down in any incarnation." That's slightly more harsh than I would be. I agree that it's a 15 to 20 minute time waster and clearly shows the limitations of being downloaded over a modem via a phone line, because you can't get a lot more in depth in terms of the file size when you're dealing with those limitations. So it's as good as it was going to be, and it's not terribly good, but I wouldn't say don't track it down in any incarnation. I would say track it down in emulation, play it a little there. I wouldn't invest in a Mega Drive CD that includes this game unless it has some of the other games that we previously covered, like A Warg Hero in the Sky, in which case, if this was included with the others, it would be fine, but I wouldn't buy a disc just for this game. I think it's a decent time waster, but it's definitely not the best that either the Sega Genesis or the MegaNet modem had to offer for the era. It's an interesting historical piece, and it's a fun enough premise, defeating the bugs in the code, that is, by squashing them under weights. I do like that idea. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. Thanks for watching Genesis Does, and I will see you right back here next week, Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things to help the channel grow. You know what they are. You know what you can do. So please help a brother out and keep things rolling right here on Mr. MegaManFan's channel. Thanks, and see you next week. Peace out.